On the Maggie Mo Show.
Whoa, the Maggie Mo Show. We have a good one, guys. We have my collaborator, the co-writer of My Pet Dragon the Musical, Joshua Vranas. And not to brag, but he's the only person that I have single-handedly, through my sage wisdom, grace, intellect, understanding, have gotten sober. I'm kidding. Obviously, he got himself sober. God got him sober. Higher power, God of our own understanding, the universe, insert higher deity here, got him sober. I was merely a vessel for which Josh to hear the message and take it up for himself. And it's very easy to kind of be like, hey, like, that was me. I told my story. He got sober. But, I've tried to get a lot of people sober and it hasn't worked out. So it's all about timing and message and attraction rather than promotion. And believe it or not, that's something I've struggled with a lot. So I'm very proud of Josh for his sobriety, and I'm very grateful and lucky that everything played out the way that it did, as you'll hear in this podcast. So I'm excited for you guys to hear all of our thoughts. Love y'all. The Maggie Mo Show. I think that was flat again. You'll have to you have to actually hear the theme song, and maybe you'll have some input for Harrison and I. Well, welcome, a big, huge, warm welcome to the one, the only, my collaborator and best friend, Joshua Vranas. Welcome to the Maggie Mo Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is so
It's
fun.
very exciting.
You're my first in-person guest, and yeah, you're my first New Yorker guest.
Really? I didn't know that.
And probably most importantly, you're my first sober guest.
Well, that is important for this, I'm assuming.
Not that the people were like wasted when I was recording with them, but they do not identify as sober, and you do identify as sober.
I do.
So, speaking of all of that, well, first of all, should we just give a little recap, like how we know each other? And
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in 2019, Josh and I went to NYU together to get our graduate musical theater degrees at Tisch. And the third assignment, we were paired together and we really hit it off. Our song was a hit. It's called How Dare You. Search it on YouTube. And then we got paired to do a thesis together. And the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, and we've been working together for 5 years now.
Which is crazy. It feels like yesterday that we wrote How Dare You,
right?
Doesn't it? Yeah.
I can still, I remember coming out of the meeting where we learned about it and telling you instantly the idea that I had.
Yeah.
And I was just like on fire with like, oh my God, I know exactly what we're going to write about. And I feel like that's been our collaboration the whole time. It's just like these light bulb moments over and over again.
I agree, and I'll never forget that moment of you pulling me into the hallway and saying, Maggie, I know exactly what it is. How dare you? And I was like, okay. And it's like your enthusiasm always lights me on fire. Like when I see your vision, it's just like, boom. And then that's why I think we work really fast together and write really fast together, because we do sync up in that moment of passion and understanding.
Yeah.
Which is always exciting. So when we met though, because I remember when I first met you, and I thought you were really cute, and then you're like, I'm married to a man, and I'm like, great. Like, I had a boyfriend at the time, but it was funny. I feel like that was a rare moment of me being like, even though I was in a relationship, I was kind of like, oh, I'm kind of mad he's married. Like, and then in class, I thought you were really smart. And you always said really insightful things. Like, I remember when you came for Hadestown and, like, all your critique. I know, sorry, Hadestown.
That's off limits. That's not going to be
Yeah, I know, we're going to delete it. We can delete it. But I just remember thinking, like, everything you said was really insightful, and I was really excited to work with you. What was your first impression of me? Do you remember?
Oh, my God. Well, you just have this effervescence about you.
Oh. That's so sweet.
You know, you just come into a room and demand attention and are just this light everywhere that you go. And so I don't know, I was instantly drawn to you. We kind of had a little click there for a little while in the first half of the year.
Yes!
And that was just like so much fun. You're someone who you just disarm people and you can make them say anything. And
Hey. I'm in the right field then.
Yeah.
Doing the right thing. That's really funny. Did you know I was sober when you met me?
no, I think I learned in the second half of the year when you wrote that song with Bella. That was a beautiful song. They need to release it.
Thank you. We're talking about releasing it. We want to, so.
Because it's great. And I remember you kind of breaking down at the beginning of it and saying how it was based on your personal experience. And I don't know, it didn't really nothing clicked in me in that moment because I wasn't sober yet. But I just remember thinking she's so brave for sharing it in this capacity.
Oh,
and being so vulnerable with her art in that way.
that's very sweet. Something else funny about that assignment is that we were supposed to write a saga song about a kind of modern news epidemic or something going on in the news, and we both chose the opiate epidemic.
We did. You're so right about that. I had forgotten about that. I forgot what I wrote in that, but I remember what you wrote.
No, I remember your song is great too.
Thank
You and Mikey's song is beautiful, and I remember thinking oh, that's interesting because everyone else did vastly different things, and I think there were probably more politically relevant things people wanted to talk about, and so for us to have both chose that was interesting.
Yeah.
And also indicative of maybe what was to come.
Yeah. And I think it's something that has always pursued me are those topics. Because I didn't bring that to Mikey. Mikey brought that to me, I remember. And I don't know, it's the universe has always pushed me in the direction of look at this, pay attention to this. And I never did until a couple months later when we were paired together.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's really wild, I think. And Josh and I are also both people that really believe in the universe and signs and manifesting and all that kind of stuff. So that was another indicator that we'd probably be a good match.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you found out I was sober, and that was very sweet of you to think I was brave. I think for whatever reason, I'm kind of missing the chip that tells me to be ashamed about it or to be afraid of talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've always been an open book as a person. And I think another reason I've always been pretty open about it is because at first it was out of fear. When I first got sober, when I was coming out of rehab, I remember telling a bunch of people right away, people that I was becoming friends with, because I never wanted to be put in an awkward situation where they would all hand me I think I didn't trust myself enough at that point.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, if they know I'm sober, they're not going to make me do a shot with them. I don't know why that was my big fear. It's oh, I'm going to be in a bar and everyone's going to be doing shots and I won't be able to resist, all those kind of early fears that I had. And so I think initially it was a defense mechanism. Okay, if they know I'm sober, I'm less likely to get in those situations. And then over time, it just became so much a part of who I am and what I do and what we ended up writing our thesis about that I absolutely have had no shame in talking about it at multiple opportunities.
But I think your fear that you just said is legitimate. I got sober and I still had people pressuring me to drink.
Well,
and so I think it's not a missing chip in your brain or anything. It's necessary. And I do think this is a little controversial.
I'm ready for it.
I think part of the AA program that I don't agree with is the anonymous part. I think that there was a point in history where that was necessary, and I don't think it is now. And I think it's actually more dangerous now because if people don't have that chip missing and they don't say that, then they'll be in that situation going through their worst fear after getting sober, and they might be more likely to give in out of the stigma of being in recovery. So I think it's a great thing. I also think it's something universally that is necessary for you as an advocate to be open.
Yeah.
Because if not, then who?
I mean, you said everything that I truly think. It's interesting and it's tough, and obviously the whole even bringing up AA is controversial because of the Tradition 5, Tradition 6, the level of press, radio, films. And even early on, when I was in rehab, I remember my first few meetings hearing about that and I think you said it more articulately than I can, but I think there was definitely such a stigma in the past, and no one wanted to admit they were an alcoholic, and understandably so. Like, if you're an alcoholic, you are a bad person. How are we ever going to get past that if we don't speak out and show that that's not what we are, and that we are great people contributing to society who also have a disease, not unlike cancer? Like, if you had cancer, would you not tell anyone?
Right.
I think that's where the kind of confusion comes into play, and I agree. And I think, if the biggest fear you have about getting sober is that people would find that out about you, then, like, of course, be anonymous. Most people are. That being said, I do think it can do a lot of harm. I also think that as a kid, I had people in my own family who were alcoholics and addicts who never talked to me about it. And so I'm living a certain lifestyle and doing crazy things I never thought I would do, but I was convinced that I had a different mental illness. I thought, everything to avoid the very obvious answer. And I think if I kind of have some resentment or sadness that people in my own family even wouldn't have opened up to me about their struggle, because then maybe I would have recognized it a lot sooner and said, oh, you know what? I'm like that. Or, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's so hidden from me. I was so naive. I knew so little that it was truly like such a, like, I don't even know what it's like, but stumbling and, like, I don't know. But the only thing I can think of is, like, the guy discovering the Mormon tomb or whatever. But that's not, we'll probably have to take that out. But, like this huge awakening of, like, wow, I'm discovering a whole world,
Of all the things for you to find a metaphor for.
But, like, because I just picture that in the Mormon story, like, picture I'm, like, stumbling through the woods and, like, finding, like, the golden glowing book, and it's like, this is the truth, And that's what it was like for me. Maybe Joseph Smith wants to chime in and tell me if that's what his experience was.
No, but it is true. It does, like, run through families.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, my uncle died of an overdose in 2009. And that was, I think 2009. Let's say 2009.
You were like 13?
I was like 11.
Okay.
Young Maggie.
I know, yeah, you're such a baby. That was another really crazy revelation early on, is when we were working on How Dare You, and you were like, oh, like, I'm 22, and I was like, oh, I was 29, I think. I was like, oh. Because I've never felt the age gap. No. So.
But, he died, I think, in 2009, and that was a really big moment for me as a person, because there was so much secrecy around it. No one in my family wanted to admit what it was. He had been sober for 10 years at that point, and one slip, and he was done. And I just remember seeing how that, like, tore apart my family for a little bit. It was so sad. And I knew that there was something underneath that. I always felt this kind of inherent connection to him. Mm-hmm. And granted, I lived in Virginia. He lived in Arizona. I only met the guy a few times, but, like, I could tell that there was something there.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, really, really weird. And now, being an adult, I look back on that and I'm like, wow, I saw a lot of myself in him. And I see so much of how it runs through families. And because of the secrecy and the shame, there's no way to talk about it unless you just talk about it.
Yeah.
And luckily, since coming out as sober, I feel like I've had a lot of really great conversations with my mom and with my other siblings about the hereditary nature of alcoholism.
Wow.
And it's been really powerful.
It sounds like it. So, speaking of getting sober, I feel like we glossed over your initial foray into sobriety. So we got paired together in 2020 to write a thesis. And we had kind of struggled with a bunch of different ideas and tried. And we always write a great song together. That's the thing. Like, I think we were coming up with good stuff. It's just the premise itself. And then I found that note in my journal from year one that said, "Is addiction a monster?" And I brought that to you, and you initially jumped on it. So what about that premise was exciting to you?
I mean, it's so inherently theatrical.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's kind of easy to start thinking of it as a musical. And, I mean, we were so deep into, like, riffing on ideas that it was just such a natural continuation of our series of ideas. I think we had gone through 6 ideas at that point.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, pitched to our professors 6 ideas. And they kept on saying, like, go deeper, find the truth of what you really want to write about. And I don't know, something led me to just have, like, the aha moment of, like, we need to write this. This is the thing to write.
Yeah.
And it just came really naturally, I think.
It did. From once we tapped into that, it was like off to the races, and we knew exactly what we wanted to say.
Yeah.
Because I, had all these opinions about addiction and sobriety and everything that's really important to me and inherent to me. So it's kind of crazy how sometimes the most obvious thing, it's like staring right at you, and you can't see it.
Yeah.
Until it hits you right in the face.
And I was living in Orlando at the time, so this was all over the phone.
Yeah.
Which was even more crazy because you don't write a musical over the phone most times.
Unless you're us. Yeah.
And we really did. I mean, that was because this was over COVID.
Yeah, Zoom should sponsor us. Like, how many people can say they wrote a full musical over Zoom, essentially?
It's true.
Okay. So I bring the premise to you. You're initially excited about it. At what point did you question, do I have my own dragon? Am I an addict? Am I an alcoholic? Was it in our first conversation, or was it as we kept kind of going deeper with it?
I gotta be honest, I don't remember the exact moment.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact conversation. But I remember how, like, the first couple weeks, when we would talk for, like, 6 to 8 hours. And I would, like, make myself a drink during
interesting.
those.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess it never, like, hit me, like, I'm drinking, we're talking about this. And funnily enough, during that time, I was pretty diligent with my drinking because it was COVID. And I knew if I went further, it would get bad. And I guess because of that, I convinced myself it wasn't bad to begin with.
Yeah.
But I just remember you telling your story in full, basically. And that was probably a 6-hour conversation in what it was, just because we were getting it all out there.
Yeah.
And I felt really close to you, and I hung up the phone, and I think the next day, we'd been working all day without calling, and I made myself a drink, and I went out on a walk, because that's what I would frequently do. And I had the weirdest experience where I was kind of buzzed, but I here's the weird thing is, like, I didn't really get drunk very easily, ever, which is why I could drink so much. it was mostly just like a very contained buzz. But this was a buzz that kind of almost turned a little like psychedelic in a way. And I really felt like my eyes were opened to like my entire family lineage. And I was like, oh my God, my uncle and me and all these people in my family. Like I just put all the pieces together and, you know, the camera zoomed into my face as it does in movies. And I was like, I had this epiphany and I was like, I'm an alcoholic. And suddenly it became clear that the voice in my head speaking wasn't me, because it tried to stop me and it tried to say, no, you're stupid. I am you. And I had this like war in my head of like, no, like I'm like, it was super weird. And I got back to my house and I went up to the door and I stopped and I said to myself, I felt like I had outrun the dragon. And I stopped myself and I said, when I walk through this door, I'm going to be sober.
Wow.
And this is maybe going a little bit woo-woo, but
I
I believe that doors are portals. And anytime that you make a promise in front of a door and you step through that door, you're stepping into a different dimension of yourself. And I think that's what I did. I think I did some kind of ritual on myself where I said, this is not my story. I do not claim this as a part of me. When I step through this door, I am done. And I took the rest of my vodka tonic. I walked in. My husband was making dinner. I took one last sip. And it tasted gross for the first time.
That's crazy.
And I'm getting kind of emotional. And I and I poured the rest down the drain. And I never drank again.
Wow. That's incredible, Josh.
Yeah.
And now it's been 4.5+ years.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be 5 years this July, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah. And it's not like it was just like magically fixed or anything. I had to really work at it and really like pay attention to it. But I would say overall, the best way for me to quit anything is just to quit cold turkey.
Yeah.
Because trying to wean myself off of it or anything is like, I'm just going to slip.
Yep.
And it's worked so far. So I'm very lucky in that regard.
Yeah.
And grateful that I had people like you to hold me accountable and to remember why. Because it took a little while for the people in my life. It was such a part of who I was.
Yeah.
It took a while for the people in my life to trust that I was telling the truth.
That's always difficult, huh?
Yeah. And it was... And I mean, like, looking back, some of my stories are, like, ridiculous. Like, almost every single weekend in undergrad, I would get 3 or 4 bottles of wine, drive out to the beach, drink them all, and then drive home, like, drunk. With friends in the car. Like,
yeah.
And I always survived because I think I needed to in order to not continue doing that. But, like, just the behaviors that we kind of overlook are sometimes crazy looking back on them.
Well, yeah, and I think that's also super indicative of the difference between someone who's an addict and somebody who just likes to drink. Is the addict is going to put themselves in these reckless situations, like drinking multiple bottles of wine and driving your friends around. Like, I can't picture, any of the quote normies in my life doing something like that, because that's just, you don't do that. That's wrong. Mm-hmm. There's something about addiction that like supersedes all of the don'ts, right?
Yeah. It's a thin line though. Because obviously the friends, also drunk, have to get into the car.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the people I was driving around were alcoholics.
Yeah.
So...
Part of that's like undergrad, like, oh, we're all just learning.
Right.
So that's kind of part of it too, but...
But that, I mean, it creates a culture of danger.
Yeah. For sure. And wow. And so when you Did you tell Danny, your husband, that night, like, I'm done drinking, or
I
how?
did.
Okay.
I guess the story continues after I put it down the drain.
Oh,
I put it down the drain, put the cup in the sink, turned around, and he was there at the stove. And I kissed him, and I said, I'm never going to drink again.
Wow.
And he was a little bit like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see about that. And I mean, he's been like my biggest advocate and the first person to really like get it.
Oh,
Who wasn't you.
I love that.
But even with that, there was a bit of a learning curve of like, well, maybe in a couple months you can have a glass of wine with dinner. And I would have to like still every part of me, every single cell had to stop vibrating for a moment for me to go, no, that will not be happening. I can't do that.
That's what most people don't get. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like, I love Danny to death, and it sounds like he was so supportive. Unfortunately, most people just, especially if you're not an alcoholic or you have someone super close to you that is, the concept of never again is so terrifying. I mean, even for alcoholics and addicts, it's terrifying. That's why it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, okay, never again, but for today I will not drink. But I think I actually have that in common with you, that I knew then, like, never again. Mm-hmm. And when people would say, like, oh, maybe, like at your wedding, or maybe when X, Y, or Z, or, yeah, you still every cell in your body, and you just say no. Mm-hmm. Like, because I know what will happen if I do.
Yeah. And it's gotten to the point now where he's so diligent about it. My dad is like this too, where he's like, they're so diligent about it. Like, Danny won't kiss me if he drinks anything. Aww. The second that alcohol touches his lips, it's a kiss on the cheek, and that's it. Aww. Because he doesn't want that taste on my mouth. And I think I was the first person to bring that up, like, hey, whenever you're drinking, don't kiss me. But he's like crazy diligent about it. Aww. And we like don't really keep alcohol in the house anymore. It's just kind of become not a part of our relationship, like it is with so many others.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that he's kind of adapted to that as well.
Totally. Did you feel that? Sorry, I cook burp. I'm like, so it sounds like a big reason that things have been good with you and Danny is the fact that alcohol wasn't really a focal point of your relationship to begin with.
Yeah.
Have you had relationships in your life that have changed a lot because you stopped drinking?
Yeah. I mean, I've had a few. I'd say my relationship with my parents, so much of my growing up was, Josh is in the house. Like, who cares if we make him a drink? Mm. Even when I was underage.
Oh, wow.
And that's not to, like, out them or anything.
No,
but cut that. But, like...
No. A lot of people are like that.
A lot of people are like that. And it's always been such a culture of drinking, and it still very much is in my house. And it was really difficult at first because that was so much of how they know me. And being queer, I used that as such a defense mechanism to not have to be honest with people.
Yeah.
And to shield myself, because growing up in a conservative household, you have to do what you need to do to survive. And in my cases, that was encouraging drinking around people. Wow. And drinking myself as a shield. And not doing that has led to much more vulnerable, terrifying, honest conversations.
Yeah.
That haven't always gone well, but were real. And I think I found that real part of me.
Yeah. That's
whether
amazing.
Or not they like that.
No, that's amazing. I feel like it's, it can be really hard with the family of origin and their relationship to substances And then you come in there and not only are you queer, but you're saying, oh, I'm not partaking in the culture of alcohol that's been lived in this house for, decades. And so that does lend itself to, I'm sure, a lot of vulnerability on your part. But I would imagine it's been not equally so, but I'm sure they've had to reckon with themselves a lot too. Because, okay, well, why isn't he drinking? And then people automatically have that mirror held up to them, like, oh, do they think I'm bad? Do they think I'm an alcoholic? Like, it's so funny how many people in my life, like, that was the first thing they said. Like, oh, well, do you think I have a problem? Like, this isn't about you.
Yeah, no, for real. Like, people personalize it because it does have such a stigma.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're being called out by you claiming yourself.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time, not just in sobriety. Like, people's reaction to standing firm in who you are, crazy.
I know.
Crazy.
It goes
should be
crazy.
Studied.
It should. So, but today, about, almost 5 years into you being sober, you say your dad is diligent about not drinking around you? Or what is the relationship with your family like now?
I had a conversation in the summer of 2022, right after our reading. That was really great because they were kind of questioning me about the show, my parents, both of them, and asking me about the show. And like, I guess it was the first time that they had seen like my sobriety through art. Mm-hmm. So they felt a little bit more like I had more to say about it than just I'm not drinking anymore.
Yeah.
And I told them about the night that I stopped and about the otherworldly experience that I had when everything kind of lined up for me in my family's history. And it was like something clicked in them where they were like, oh, like, you mean this. You're real. And like, you've thought about this more than just like, I saw a BuzzFeed article of how alcohol's bad for you. And so I quit because I'm on a diet or whatever. Like, it was like deep in every cell of my body. And they saw that and they were crying and I was crying. And it was like, from that moment, they never offered me alcohol again. And my dad would always ask before making himself a drink if he could do that.
Oh.
We've gotten to the point a little past that where I don't have to validate every time that he needs to drink. But I think it was very sweet how much it was like taking care of me.
Oh. Yeah.
And caring about that.
It sounds like they got a lot out of the show then.
Yeah, I think so.
So what do you think, if you could impart any message on the world about addiction, is it what we say in Dragon, or how would you phrase what you most want the world to know about addiction?
Let me think about that.
No, it's tough.
I'd probably say the phrase connection is the opposite of illness is the best way to describe my thoughts. But I would take that one step further and say, yes, connection is the opposite of illness. And that's why anonymity keeps the problem going.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Keeps the stigma alive. And I think in the last 10 years or so, a lot more people have been open. Like, reality stars have been open. Celebrities have been open.
Do you see Lindsay Lohan now has 10 years?
No, but that's amazing.
And everyone's like, look, she looks so good, she looks so good. I'm like, yeah, that's sobriety, you know?
Well, and I think it's really good. I'm lucky that I'm queer, because being queer, you instantly have to look at the world and the systems in the world and scrutinize them and say, why do I not fit into this?
Yeah.
Why did these systems exist in the first place? And such a big cultural institution is alcohol. And I think everybody should take one step back, remove yourself from yourself, and just look at what it is.
Yeah.
Look at the fact that there's a bar on every corner. Look at the fact that the only time that you're socializing, the only time that you're hanging out with your friends, you have to get buzzed.
Yeah.
What is that and why? And it doesn't mean that you're an alcoholic. It doesn't have to mean that. But I feel like our relationship with alcohol specifically is so inherent.
Yeah. Big time.
And so scrutinizing that and seeing what part you're playing in that, I think is really important.
That was so eloquently put. I love everything you just said. Because it's true. I mean, and I think that you talk about how being queer, you automatically, I mean, I'll rephrase, but you already are an outsider, and so you have no choice but to see all the things that are commonplace and everyday and how the world works, and you can't help but be like, okay, well, that's not how I work, so maybe there's something wrong with these institutions that we're all just kind of bred to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And I think seeing alcohol as one of those institutions is really profound and very true. Because you're right, I think alcoholic or not, the way that we are made to drink and purchase and surround our social lives with alcohol, there's something to that. And I mean, part of it is also like, you have to see that, and I'm, okay, controversial. I don't necessarily hate capitalism. I think there are worse ways to run countries. That being said, this is a huge example to me of how capitalism doesn't care about people's well-being at all. And it's about the money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And isn't there something wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you necessarily, you know, alcoholic or not, like, even if you are just someone that can have a glass of wine, do you want to?
Yeah.
You know, like, it's, yeah. There are a lot of issues that need to be brought to light, I think, with the alcohol industry and the fact that it doesn't care about people's well-beings. Because I think, you know, I've read a bunch of different statistics, and I think anywhere between like 10% and 25% of people are alcoholics or addicts. Mm. So to peddle it in the way that they do shows such a blatant disregard for human lives.
Yeah.
And that's not cool.
No, not at all. And what I'd say to anybody who is flirting with sobriety.
Sober curious. You'll see Harrison talks about it.
I would say, A, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. One day at a time is so real.
Yeah.
But also you have to kind of think of it like learning a new language. Because you're not just, again, like just the act of thinking about becoming sober is seeing the world in a completely new lens. It's new building blocks to the way that you interact with the world. And that can be really intimidating, really scary, and really lonely. Mm-hmm. And it's like learning a language. And it's really difficult to do. So learn the basics, take your time, and understand that it is going to be better for you in the long run because it's going to create new neural pathways and teach you how to relate to people in such a different way.
That's amazing. No, I agree 100%. And in terms of creating the new neural pathways, I still remember, and I talk about this a good amount with different friends I have who are sober, but I do think that for even the first, I want to say like a year of being sober, whenever I'd feel anything other than happiness, something would go off in my brain like tequila. Mm-hmm. Like, or, you know, just like silence it, do something about it, change it, like drink something and change that feeling. And it was crazy. Like, I'll never forget, like, pulling away in my driveway once and I was mad at my mom and, like, all I could think about was, like, the bottle of Jose Cuervo. Like, I was like, and, you know, then you get sober, you have the tools to stop, you have the tools to understand, like, put some space between yourself and that impulse. But then it's also, though that is not my impulse. Like, it's been years since the first thing in my head has been tequila. Mm-hmm. What do you think? It seems like you're very strong in your sobriety and you have such strong convictions for why you are sober that help you with that. But are there ever moments that you wish you could drink, or that you've felt like tempted to drink again, or?
I mean, in the early days, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I told you a little while ago, I mean, like, a little while ago, last week maybe, that, like, anytime I get into, like, a little tiff with anybody, there is always that voice in the back of my head that just goes, wouldn't it be so much easier if you drank?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be so much easier? And it's like, no, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I'm at the point where I'm like, that would truly just fuck everything up.
Well, that's the truth too. Is you play the tape forward and you're like, oh no, that would,
yeah, like,
in fact, that would ruin my life.
Right, and like I can be upset with other people, and other people can be upset with me without me giving myself the biggest disappointment of my life.
Wow.
I'm not. No one's opinion of me matters that much, and my opinion of myself should never be so low that I'm willing to let that happen.
Amen.
And it another thing I care very deeply about, other than sobriety, is the fact that artists don't have to kill themselves.
Yes.
Like, depression is not an inherent quality of artists. Alcoholism is not an inherent quality of artists. And I think that is something that made me struggle a lot in the beginning, were those beliefs.
Yeah.
Because I loved being a depressed, starving artist. I loved that because it fed my ego. It made me feel like I was doing something. Do you know what I mean? And that's why on our calls I would get myself a drink, you know, and all that sort of stuff. It was like, oh, I'm doing it.
I'm like a brooding artist.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm so cool.
Split my wrists.
And like I think Sondheim couldn't drink without whiskey. Neither could
or couldn't write
without whiskey. Yeah. So Hemingway's the same. Like,
they always say that, and I have such a hard, maybe I'm just a different type of alcoholic. I have such a hard time believing that.
Well, yeah, it's like, I don't think they couldn't write without it. I think it's just that they didn't write without it. And it's a pattern. It's a habit.
Yeah.
And the more that we ingrain stuff like that in the way that, I mean, we know people. We know people who can't write without being in some kind of altered state. And it eventually starts to hold you back.
I think so, yeah.
Hot take.
Hot take. You were coming in hot.
None of you all are listening.
I know, right? Well, they don't know it's them. That's the thing.
That's the thing. And it's sad because...
No, it breaks my heart to see how brilliant some of these people we're talking about are. And I know what the problem is. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that's hard about being sober a lot of the time, is kind of like, okay, what's overstepping versus what's appropriate? Mm-hmm. And like, you've been my miracle story, because I truly let go, let God. I had no expectations if you were going to hear what I said and apply it to your own life. But the fact that you have is like changed both of our lives for the better by so much, right? That being said, it can be hard to watch some people just hit the same wall. It's like, hey, maybe, you don't have to smoke weed today, but that's unfathomable. And so it's just going to be the same. It's like Groundhog's Day, right? Where it's like every day, like, well, what could I do different? Well, I'll probably just end up smoking again. Okay, depressed. Like, that cycle. And how hard it is to break out of that. And it's definitely hard to watch. So.
Yeah. And I remember being in undergrad especially and thinking I was like so cool for doing it like that.
Yeah.
And really, like, looking back on it, I was like, I was just wasting time. Like,
I know.
You eventually get to the point where you can't even write anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what was the worth of finishing that entire bottle of vodka? And like, I never felt good about myself. I never felt good in myself. And that's not what the important work of being an artist is.
Yeah.
It's so convoluted. Artists should live, and they should live well, and they should be proud and excited of the work that they're doing, not leaning into vices as a way of coping with it, just because that's what artists have claimed to do in the past.
Yeah. I think that's true. There's such a weird glamorization of alcoholism, especially in the artist community. And it's ultimately dangerous. And I think, like, maybe sometimes I feel like, wow, was I such a bad case of this? Like, you know, I was hospitalized multiple times, and I would, you know, like, throw my shoes at a guy, and he broke up with me. Like, I had these, like, really, like, pretty starkly bad nights with alcohol that, to me, I guess I'm lucky that I had those rough bottoms, because it's just very clear, like, hey, you and alcohol don't mix, right? And so I think what can be, so it's interesting, because in a way I'm like, oh, I wish maybe if they had one of those bad nights, it would, like, resonate that this isn't helping you. But I don't know. It's sadly, it's very ingrained in the artist culture, but I can't relate to it at all, because I feel like when I was in, like, the throes of my addiction, like, I couldn't write anything.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Well, and the crazy thing about it, too, is that the journey to sobriety is so personalized that if they went through any of those things that you went through, it wouldn't affect them the same way.
Yeah.
Just like it probably wouldn't have affected me to throw shoes at an ex-boyfriend. Like, like that may not have done anything to me. But what does something to me on this end of it is I remember frequently thinking, wouldn't it be so sexy if I died from this?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be so sexy if somebody just found me and I had overdosed? Like, ooh, that's a legacy to leave. What was I thinking?
No,
like, that wasn't me.
No, that's, like, really sad. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's depressing. Like, hey, no one's going to do that. Like, no one's going to be like, oh, he lives such a tortured, amazing life.
So, he was so brilliant, though.
Right.
He was so beautiful. He was so brilliant. Like, no, they're going to be like, this is really sad. This is embarrassing.
Killed himself.
Yeah.
Like, this nobody killed himself for no reason because he was like, oh, how romantic.
Yeah.
Gross.
I know.
It's so cringy.
No, it is, but I'm not gonna lie, I feel like there were times in my life where I had thoughts like that too. I'd be like, oh, they're all gonna regret it one day. You know, like, when I'm dead. And they're all gonna say, oh, she was so, like, brilliant, she had so much potential. But the truth is, like, nothing is more devastating than wasted potential.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, so, like, that's more sad than anything. So why waste potential? Why put yourself in situations time and time again where you're continuously letting yourself down and wasting your potential? Unfortunately, I feel like addiction has a way of doing that.
Yeah.
To a lot of people.
Yeah, because it has to beat you down.
Yeah.
And give you this false sense of ego. Because that's what it was telling me. It was telling me, after I die, then I'll be worth it.
Wow.
And that's not true. I'm worth it right now.
Right now.
And I can only know that right now. Because when you're in it, you believe it.
Yeah.
I thought I was nothing. I thought I was nobody. But once I finally had enough alcohol in my system that my entire system shut down and my soul left my body, that's when it was worth it. That's when my body was worth being on this planet. And, like, fuck that. That's not real. That's like...
Well, you're sacrificing yourself at, like, the altar of alcohol.
Right.
And it wins.
And that's why I think, like, the metaphor of the dragon, that the voice of the dragon is so useful to talking about addiction, because that's what it is. On the other side of this, those moments of glamorization or trying to convince me to keep drinking or anything like that, it's like, yes, somewhere inside of me that was a part of me.
Yeah.
But thinking back on it, it's not even the voice that I have in my head. It's like a completely different voice of a completely different entity. And
it's a demon.
It is. And, like, I think a lot of people would realize that voice is very loud if they really listen to the voice that's talking to them. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny that we both relate so heavily to the concept of a voice in your head, because I used to think that voice was God, which is crazy. But it just shows how diluted I was.
Mm-hmm.
Because the voice would say, like, go in the bathroom and, like, finish your bottle of tequila. And I'd be like, no, I don't feel well. Or, you know, like, Maggie would be like, I think I've had too much. And the voice is like, come on, pussy. Like, I know you can finish it. Like, it would, and I'd
And
be
you were
like,
like,
okay.
yes, God.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. I'd be like, oh, God wants this for me. Or, like, you know, or, like, I know that's so fucked up. And, like, people never understand that. But that's really what I would think. And, that's how awful it is. It really is just your disease just wants to kill you.
Now,
Like,
was
that's
this
ultimately what it wants to do.
what God was this? The Mormon God? Was this
Yes,
like
this
you
was
were
Joseph
finding
Smith's,
the tablets?
the tablets.
Like, yeah.
That's
Bringing it full circle.
a glow in the woods. The Mormon tablets. And that was my religion. There isn't a Broadway musical about it, though. Until...
About Mormonism?
I was kidding. About my religion.
Oh. Okay.
But that's why we need Dragon to get on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Which it will. Stay tuned. Mark our words. The other question, I might, like, splice this up because it kind of pertains to more what we were talking about earlier, but I have a theory with a lot of addicts that there was one time the drug of choice, like, be it alcohol, really worked for you. And so every time after that, you're trying to chase that one time. But it can never actually be replicated because, like, alcohol's a poison. Or, you know, like, you can't depend on feeling that way that one time that it worked. Like, I remember once I was, like, sobbing one night, like, some guy ghosted me. That's a crazy... I never talk about that relationship. Max, do you know that name? Yeah, because it was such a dark, terrible relationship that I, like, never talk about it.
Yeah.
He was like, we suspect incest. I might delete all this. But,
you've told me.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You've told me about it, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I remember he had, like, we went on this date. No, we do. It was crazy. And, we kind of... Okay, so he had, like... We went on this date that I thought went, like, so well. And then he ghosted me. And I was, like, devastated because I was like, no, it went so well. Like, we really connected, you know. And I remember, like, drinking my little silver Patron, and for maybe, like, 20 minutes forgetting about him ghosting me and being like, oh, I feel okay, I can handle it. But then, of course, minute 21 and it all comes crashing down and then you're just drunk and miserable. But it was like, I felt like for a lot of my drinking as an adult, I was chasing those 20 minutes. Or it probably wasn't even 20. It was probably like 5 minutes of, like, hey, I don't really care about that thing I was so upset about. Did you ever have that where you felt like, oh, this is... Like, where you were always trying to get back to a certain feeling that alcohol gave you?
Well, let me start by saying I'm somebody who thrives and loves intensity. Like, I don't drink milk in my coffee. I don't drink sugar in my coffee. I used to drink...
Yeah, I was going to say, we've been talking about...
black cold brew. And people think I'm crazy. My favorite type of chocolate is 90% dark chocolate. I used to eat baking chocolate as a child. Because I'm sick in the head.
I was going to say, so, I'm somehow not surprised.
And when it came to
shocking.
Alcohol, like, my drink of choice was usually a vodka tonic.
Yeah.
Heavy on the vodka. Light on the tonic. A little bit of ice just for flavor, let's say. And, like, I could down an entire bottle in one night easily and not be drunk.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's the one thing about my sobriety is that I am haunted by every single thing that I did while I was drunk. Is that I remember everything.
You didn't black out.
I never blacked out.
That's crazy.
I never vomited. I never blacked out. I vomited one time, and it was because I had Mike's Hard Lemonade. I had 2 sips of it, and I had an entire bottle of tequila that night, and the next morning I woke up and I vomited exclusively Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Whoa.
Crazy. Yeah. But... So I love intensity, and the intensity leads to, like, a mania of sorts.
Yeah.
Where I would get drunk as I could, go to sleep, and the next day I would be fucking Superman. I'm not kidding you. My best days ever in my entire life were the days after And people would have the worst. They'd be like, oh, I'm hungover. And I would be like, I'm doing everything. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm cleaning my whole apartment. I'm living my best life. I'm writing the most I ever have. And it's because, I don't know, but like I had the anti-hangover. So I was just always encouraged to drink as much as I could in the evening because the next day it was going to be the most euphoric experience.
Wow.
And like the drinking never really did anything for me because, again, at most I got kind of buzzed.
Yeah.
It was the day after that I just loved.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn to not be so intense. Because that's a little crazy.
But that's why you're an amazing writer and storyteller.
Thank you.
Because, and I feel similarly, like I would describe myself as intense. And I'm drawn to intensity as well. Mm-hmm. Like there's something, well, because it's inherently dramatic, right? And interesting. Mm-hmm. And the most of something.
Yeah.
So I understand the intrigue of that, for sure. So you mentioned that you used to drink a cold brew. So I know you've been on a journey of not having caffeine. What led you to want to stop drinking caffeine? What was your relationship with caffeine like before?
Mm-hmm. I've always had a pretty tumultuous relationship with caffeine.
Yeah.
Caffeine and alcohol, I'd say, have been... I'm driven by liquids.
Yeah, me too.
My life has been driven by liquids for some reason. And those are the two.
Can you pause? I might just unplug that because it might be
totally.
annoying for a second.
Can I actually get a Diet Coke?
Oh, yeah, please.
Oh my god, thank you.
Oh, it has caffeine though, but...
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
It has so little compared to...
Well, it does. No, I
any
think
sort of
that
coffee.
people are always like, how do you sleep at night? I'm like, with this like 10% of Diet Coke, like 10% or whatever it is.
Right.
10 milligrams.
Compared to cold brew, which has like 300.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I would know, like, because I don't drink coffee very often, and when I do drink it, I notice a tangible difference. I'm like, oh, I'm wired.
Hey, I'm here, guys.
I'm here, yeah. Remember, people always wanted me to be more calm, though. Like, people are, like, when I went to Second City in Chicago, they were like, Maggie, have you ever tried Quaaludes? I'm like, I don't know, Bill Cosby. I'm like, think I'm good.
Yeah, I won't be doing that, but
So with caffeine, you've always loved it.
Yeah. It's kind of run tandem with alcohol, where like from the very first sip I ever had as a child, and I had both alcohol and coffee probably when I was like 6 or 7.
Yeah, that's healthy. No.
Yeah, right? You know, clearly there was nothing wrong. Yeah, when I was like 6 or 7, and it was just like something turned on. And I remember because my parents always drank black coffee, and
wait, can I pause real quick?
Yeah.
Because I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you felt that turn on? You felt turn on. That like electricity, was it from the like elusivity and like the forbidden nature of the coffee and alcohol? Because I think as a kid I can see how it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to drink coffee, and then you have a little sip and you're like, oh, I'm so bad, but it's kind of like exciting. Or did you feel like you physically felt the caffeine hit your bloodstream and it excited you?
More that.
Yeah.
I feel like I was a very dark child, very dark, scary child. I am not even kidding you. I was very light and joyous in my life, but in my alone time, I was like fighting literal demons. So it was. I had a dark childhood, and anything that was like dark and intense, I was like, this gets me.
Yeah.
So coffee was just like, it gets me, you know? And that's really the only type of caffeine I regularly consume. Like, now I'm having a Diet Coke, but like, again, that has so little caffeine. Virtually does nothing, because for years, since I was in high school, I was drinking lethal amounts of caffeine through coffee every single day.
Wow.
And I'm not being hyperbolic. Like, I don't think any amount of caffeine could kill me at this point.
Wow.
My tolerance is so high. And I was like, And I was dogging on people who like needed something to write. I did need caffeine.
Yeah.
Like
it's different. I mean, yeah, keep talking, but
like my entire first musical I wrote buzzed in one evening. And then everything subsequently, I would say I wrote high on caffeine.
yeah.
And it got to a point over the fall where I was kind of flirting with stopping it, and I would try to go days without it and fail miserably because I was really trying to reconnect with my emotional center. And I am the type of person who tries very hard to be a robot as much as possible.
Sorry.
And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It's like
meaning emotionless and competent. Yeah.
And just, if I can just be a machine and just like produce,
Crank it out.
I would love to do that, honestly. Because that's where I kind of thrive, is in that headspace. But what I didn't realize was how much my relationships around me were suffering from my lack of ability to engage. Because I was living life so mentally detached. And there's a different, I wouldn't even call it a dragon with caffeine, but there's a different voice. It's like a little Muppet voice. It's down here, and it's like, this doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, the dragon's up here, and it's all elusive, and it's romantic, and it's kill yourself like Judy Garland, and then...
Right, and it has its...
This voice is just Oscar the Grouch coming out of a trash can, and it's gross, and you're like, ugh. But...
It's the same little monster as nicotine. I'm gonna... interject with
absolutely.
that.
Okay, and that's the other thing, interesting tidbit, is I always knew if I was to ever touch hard drugs, I would die on them instantly.
Yeah.
Like, I would be gone in a week if I ever did hard drugs. So I never did, despite being very much surrounded by coke all through undergrad. I somehow had the willpower to know, because my uncle overdosed.
Yeah.
And I just inherently knew. And I have always known with cigarettes. I love cigarettes.
I know.
I love the smell of them. I love the look of them. I'm like, oh, they're so cool.
It is really sexy. Like, the
they're so dark and intense and everything. I'm like, oh, there's such an inherent sexuality to it that just, like, draws me. But I know if I smoke, I will be the worst smoker on the planet. Just... Oh, yeah.
Packs a day.
Like 10 packs a day, if I could.
Wow.
And so I can't touch it because I'd be done for. I'm
really proud of you, and I think it's the best thing that you've never done, is never picking up a cigarette, because if I could go back in time.
But, yeah, when it comes to caffeine, sorry to reroute back to that, it was about my emotional center and about the quality of my relationships, not just getting through the day surrounded by people, but actually being able to connect with people.
Yeah.
And not be so work-focused forward. And honestly, it's been really freeing. Because, I quit cold turkey. And
so impressive.
Thank you. It's been like a month and a half, maybe. And I cry a lot.
I love it. Please.
I cry a lot.
Keep it coming.
I allow myself to get angry. I'm still not at a place where it just, like, comes naturally, but I'm so much more tuned into myself. I think, again, I only think of myself through the lens of the art that I make, but I think I'm making the most deep, rich art I've ever made. And it's been like the biggest up level in my entire life just by quitting that. And I still drink a hell of a lot of coffee. It's all decaf.
Yes. I know.
But and I was telling you, I didn't like withdraw or anything from it immediately. But like
it took a minute.
3 weeks in is when all the caffeine had finally left my system.
Yeah.
Red flag. And it was like the worst week of my life. But the bounce back on the other end of that has been just freeing and euphoric and luxurious in...
You're on the, as they say, the pink cloud.
Yeah, I think I was. Now I'm kind of more evened out. But, like, I would never go back again.
Yeah.
I was downing, like, 5 or 6 cold brews a day. Large.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also, I think, pretty typical addict behavior. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of, like, because there is a weird... We all seem to have a strange belief that, like, oh, as long as I have this, if I can just have this, I'll be okay. And, like, my feelings won't be as intense, and I won't be as sad, and I won't be as X, Y, or Z. Like, I just need this thing. And for you, it seems like that thing was coffee. Mm. Right? And, I mean, I can get that way with nicotine sometimes. She'll be like, it must be because I haven't had a hit of my vape in, like, 2 hours, you know? And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Just feel the fucking feeling. Why are we so afraid? And it's funny, for people that love drama and love intensity, we're so afraid of feeling it in ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
Which is crazy.
And I think it's because that overwhelming intensity, it's so overwhelming. And then we, being dramatic people, heighten it to the point where it's like, oh my God, this is going to kill me.
Yeah.
And we're constantly staring into the void, feeling like we're about to fall or jump.
Yep.
And so it's like, just let me back away at all.
Yeah.
Just to be able to observe it first.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because with noticing the pattern of addiction in my own life, yes, it's been alcohol. Yes, it's been caffeine. I've now been able to start observing my thought patterns too as addictions, as voices, stories that I'm telling myself. Mm-hmm. And being able to go, I don't want to claim that. I'm addicted to that. I'm addicted to victimizing myself or to believing that people don't like me, which is really just me not liking myself. Yeah. Like, I read somewhere that, you know, we never release ourselves of addiction. We simply substitute it with things that won't kill us. Mm. And
well, yeah.
While I don't necessarily know if I believe that, I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah. Well, we're so wired to need something. Mm-hmm. And maybe that thing is self-victimization. But if that becomes the thing, then we're going to do it to death.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
Like, follow that merry-go-round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the difference probably between an addict and a normie, is that I don't think they necessarily have those... The tracks in their brain don't go on a loop. Mm-hmm. Like, they can go straight, they can turn right, they can turn left. They probably don't have as much fun. But we, you know, like, we have that little, like, spiral that our track goes on.
But, like... Like, what the fuck, though?
No, I know.
What would it be like to experience that? I have no clue. And so I don't even know if that's true.
Yeah.
Like, it probably is. But, like, I have no idea how that would even be possible. Because, to me, it's always the spiral.
Me too.
I'm always in the toilet, just going round and round.
Yeah.
Somebody flushes me.
Yeah.
And usually it's myself flushing.
Yeah.
Which is even better. I'm looking up, like, at 2 per day.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think about that all the time. I think about, like... Because one of the last drinks I ever had was at a Christmas tea. And it was me, my mom, my grandma, and my sister. And, you know, they, like, pour everyone a glass of champagne. Mm-hmm. And obviously, like, I was just like... You know, at that point, I was like, this is nothing. Mm-hmm. And my sister had, like, a few sips, and she was talking, she's, like, eating little sandwiches. And I was just like... Okay, is she gonna fit? Like, why? Okay, like, there's this much left in her glass. Like, is she gonna? And then, you know, like, an hour goes by, and it's time to leave. We, like, sign the check. We get up from the table, and she still hasn't finished it. And it was driving me insane. Mm. And so she gets, like, when she's out of sight, I just take it and down it, because I was like, holy shit, how did you just leave that much alcohol in a glass? You know, like, exactly. And it was driving me crazy. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine being the person that leaves alcohol in a glass. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine being the person that has a margarita at a restaurant and then, like, that's their fun for the night, or I just, it's like unfathomable to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what's...
Were you raised in a family that was like, you have to finish everything on your plate?
Well, I think for whatever reason I'm like that. My parents, no, I think I was kind of a brat. I was like, I was a very picky eater, so I think I was always trying to get around, like, no, I'm not gonna eat that. So I'd be like, okay, have 2 bites of the salad. Okay, like, it was more like that.
That's surprising. You don't seem too picky now.
Really?
Yeah. Do you feel like you're picky?
Yeah, but I think it's, well, it's funny. Something that I think we should address, because it keeps coming up, is like, our own beliefs of ourselves are very powerful too, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we, as long as we believe, and that's one of the questions I have about addiction treatment, is the fact that as much as I think it saved my life to say, like, I'm an alcoholic, okay, well, then that's very apparent. I should never drink again, because if you're an alcoholic and you drink, you know, terrible things happen. Okay, I can conceptualize that. That's helped me. That saved my life the past 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I'm so convinced, like, I'm so convinced of the fact that I'm an addict and an alcoholic that I wonder if I don't exhibit those types of behaviors in other areas of my life, that I wouldn't even be inclined to if I wasn't so convinced that I was an addict. Does that make any sense?
I think so, yeah.
So I think, again, like, because from such an early age, oh, she's so picky, Maggie's so picky, Maggie's so sensitive, Maggie, you know, all this shit about me. And I believe it because that's what I was told so frequently. Mm-hmm. So now I have this belief of myself that, like, I am a very picky eater. You're telling me you don't necessarily notice that? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Like, I might not be that picky of an eater. Historically, I was told that very often, so much so that I believed it. But maybe it's not true anymore. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone to hear that and think, oh, well, you're right, maybe I'm not an alcoholic. Like, no, you are. Like, if you...
If you're thinking
like,
it...
Period. If there's one thing to take away, if you think you're an alcoholic, if you've ever been told you are an alcoholic, if you've gotten a DUI, if you've ended up in rehab, if you've ever found yourself at an AA meeting, the odds, 99.9% chance you are an alcoholic and you shouldn't drink. Period. All that to say, I think we do need to be careful about the things that we tell ourselves about ourselves consistently. Yeah. Because we become that. We manifest those things.
I flip-flop between the language a lot. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like, I will frequently kind of flirt with the idea of saying I'm in recovery. Yeah. Or I'm sober. Or I'm an alcoholic. Especially when introducing myself to people. All three come with their own social baggage. Yes. And it's all different. Yes. And I don't know which one I identify with the most. Probably all three. Yeah. But, like, what is the story I want to be telling myself? Yeah. I rarely say I'm an alcoholic. Yeah. Because I feel like that is just also implies you're currently in it. Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that reinforces a behavior and a personality trait that I don't want to identify with. Yeah. I'm in recovery is telling me that it's constant work, which is a good thing, but also reinforcing that constant work. Yes. I'm more likely to think, maybe I could drink if I'm in recovery. Interesting. Whereas if I'm sober, it feels final. Yes. It doesn't feel like one day at a time anymore. Yes. But it feels final. Like, I am sober, that is me, period. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I lean more towards I'm sober, but sometimes I have to go back in and remember it is one day at a time. And that's when I start to use I'm in recovery again. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I feel like I've gone through similar questions about how to identify myself. I tend to say, like, oh, I'm sober. Oh, I've been sober for 5 years. Oh, I've been sober for 8 years. Like, whatever it is usually what I say. I think there's usually enough ambiguity around that. Like, oh, you're so, okay, I'm guessing there's a reason, but you don't owe anyone an explanation either. So yeah. That's kind of a nice part of that one. But again, it is great to talk about it. Well, yeah, the more that you can see that there are people on the other end willing to just claim it, I think it's powerful. Most people that I have met or talked with about it, and I've mentioned it casually, it's always met with like a, wow, that's great, good for you, and kind of no more questions. But some people like kind of light up a little bit and like want to know more. And that's really exciting, I think.
I agree. I love that. That's like my favorite thing. Is like, oh, yeah, could we get more into that? And you're like,
Yeah.
why, yes.
What is that like? Like, yeah, how do you do that? I'm like, well, let me tell you.
Like, oh, wow, that's crazy. You know?
Yeah.
And you're like, is it? You know, who, me? Yeah. Well, Josh, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to address or that you want to say.
Well, I have a question for you.
Oh, please.
Turning the tables, I'm the interviewer.
Yeah, I know.
What was your last drink?
That's a really good question. Oh my god. Well, it's funny because I remember my last handful of pills.
Okay.
On January 15th, 2016.
What?
This is safe. Thought this was safe. Because what I would do is I would take a handful of Vicodin and put it in my mailbox. Because I'd want to go on a run, and then, like, halfway through the run, I'd be like, let's, like, get some fuel.
That's kind of brilliant. Don't take that advice, but, like, damn. You really thought that one through.
Because I was like, oh, it'll just be easier. I won't be in this, but, like, my joints won't hurt. Like, I'll just go along, you know. So I remember that. I remember opening the mailbox and being like, oh, my God, is this the last? Because it was my last time before I went to rehab. My last drink... we were watching The Bachelor. All of this was in the same, like, 3-day span. And we would sometimes have, like, champagne or wine for people at our... Because we used to watch the TV show The Bachelor and have, like, parties surrounding watching it at our California house. And I remember, like, making some crazy... Like, I had my own tequila. And I was kind of, like, making... Because I would always try to be, the comedian of the party. You know, where like, I'd be like... You know, they'd say something on TV, I'd be like, wah, 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 you know, like, commenting on whatever was happening on screen. And I remember making some jokes the next day. I was like, that wasn't funny at all. Like, what was I talking about? But it's like, that was the last time I was drunk. So, yeah, I think tequila was my last. And that was my number one alcohol. Like, my AOC, tequila. Alcohol of choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they always say, like, it's an upper. I don't know if that's true. Like, there are so many, like, myths about alcohol that are just false.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
Yeah. I have another question to kind of bounce off of that. You're very ingrained in pop culture. You watch a lot of reality TV. Too much. No. Has your relationship with shows like The Bachelor changed since... Because, like, there's media that I've engaged with that I really only, like, loved when I was in my addiction. And now, on the other side of it, I have a different relationship with it. Have you experienced that?
Like, yes and no. I think what's been hard, especially when I was in my 20s and sober, is I started seeing things through the lens. Like, once I got sober, I started seeing everything through the lens of, okay, is that person an alcoholic or are they not? And, like, I know that's a crazy thing to admit, but I think we all kind of do that. Like, when you're first coming to terms with something about yourself, I think it's kind of natural to wonder who else is experiencing that thing. And so I think a lot of the reality shows I watched, like, I'm going to throw a bunch of them out here that you probably don't know. Siesta Key on MTV, or like, you know, Jersey Shore, Floribama Shore, Summer House. And I remember it was kind of weird watching those shows at first because they were all such, like, party shows. Like, Jersey Shore, like, they are wasted like, it's an amazing show, but so much of it is centered around the partying and the drinking. And so I think that's kind of weird. And it's something that before I got sober, I never thought about. Like, I was just like, oh yeah, they're in a fight. Or like, you know, like Mike and Snooki are fighting again. As opposed to like, now I see it and I'm like, oh, well, he's very drunk and she's sober and that's why they're in a fight. Or, and then like, for example, Summer House. I'm sorry, I'm going to come for the cast of Summer House. I remember my ex, who I'm interviewing on Tuesday for the show, so everyone get excited for that episode. But we had a hard time because we were both sober. He has only like 3 months less than me of sobriety, and we would always watch Summer House, and we were like, I don't know if it's because we were in our first few years of sobriety, but it was really hard for us to watch certain cast members who were so obviously alcoholic, and we were just like, get it together, dude. Like, we'd, like, comment on their Instagram, like, maybe stop drinking, you know? Like, we were kind of crazy, but it's, like, it's weird, and I think because we were both in the same place, we kind of, like, fed off each other's anger at the shows.
Yeah.
So I think that part of it is weird. I think, unfortunately, I was such a blackout kind of drinker that I didn't, like, now I get to enjoy any show I watch, whereas that was not, like, I would pass out. Like, I remember going to the Muppet movie and passing out. And, like, I loved the Muppet, you know, and that's what's sad is I'm like, why would I put myself in a situation where I couldn't enjoy one of my favorite movies, you know? But that's the place I was in at the time.
Do you think, like, if you were to... Have you watched the Muppet movie since then?
Yeah, and I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, there hasn't been anything that has been an experience of, like, oh, I can't engage, or I don't even like this if I'm not drunk.
I mean, I think going to a Rocky Horror live show sober would be interesting. But that being said, I've watched it many times since being sober, and I still love it. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a really good question. Do you think there were things that you only liked when you were drunk that you don't anymore?
I asked that question, but I didn't think about it for myself.
No,
I don't know. I mean, I definitely feel like I have a different relationship with certain things, but... And a lot of things that are, like, triggers.
Yeah.
A little bit. Where it was so ingrained in my alcoholism that on the other end of it, every time I listen to it or watch it or whatever, I get that little itch, you know? But yeah, I can't think of any specifics.
Yeah. I do remember I used to watch Golden Girls High a lot. And so I think that is one that sometimes I kind of look back on, like, with rose-colored... Rose, the character, Betty's character. I don't know. Just kind of being like, oh, that wasn't that nice that one time, you know? But again, the show's so much funnier. I think that's the biggest thing is how much alcohol and drugs, like, dull your brain, right? And so I feel like since getting sober, I can enjoy things so much more fully.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is nice.
It's great.
Definitely a pro. Well, thank you so much, Josh. I love you.
I love you.
You're my favorite person. I'm so glad we got to do this.
This was so much fun.
Yes! I can't wait to release it.
I know, it's gonna be
So
amazing.
fun. Yeah, and I'll probably record a little intro and we'll be all good. So, thank you.
Moving the whole time.
Oh, it's okay.